What do you get when prog rock legends trade 20-minute solos for radio hooks? You get Asia. Formed in the chaos of the early 80s, when punk was loud and hair was louder, Asia was the sound of virtuosos trying to play it cool and accidentally topping the charts. This isn't a story about caves and concept albums. This is the moment prog met pop and actually got played on the radio. You've probably sung along to this one 1,000 times, but do you know who was behind it? Asia wasn't just a band, it was a rock summit meeting. We're talking the absolute heavyweights of 70s progressive rock, stepping into the 80s like they had something to prove. By the end of the 70s, the prog rock giants like Yes, King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer were burned out, broken up, or both. Punk had flipped the table, and the music was chasing shorter songs and bigger hooks. Then, in 1981, four legends decided to take a different shot. John Wetton. Fresh off stints with King Crimson, UK and Roxy Music, had grown tired of playing music that impressed critics but didn't connect with bigger audiences. He wanted to build something more accessible. He even said he wanted to write music your girlfriend could like too. After a solo deal fell through, his management started looking for new collaborators. That's where the idea of a new group took shape. Enter Geoff Downes. He just wrapped up his run with the Buggles and short stint in Yes. He had the pop instincts, the production chops, and the modern sound. Wetton and Downes clicked right away and began writing together. Their demos showed real promise. Not just in sound, but in commercial potential. At this point, Geffen Records got involved. They liked what they heard, but wanted more star power. So they reached out to Steve Howe, the guitar legend from Yes.
Final touchdown on Asia Tour 82 of America. Hit me. Yeah.
And Carl Palmer, the driving force behind Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
The most security I could ever have is to actually be sitting behind my drum set, because once I'm there, I've sat there for so many hours. I mean, I'm guarded, you know. I can do what I have to do.
Steve Howe, after the band fell apart post-drama, was open to a cleaner, more direct approach, as long as it still had integrity. Palmer was looking for something more contemporary, still challenging but more rhythm-driven and less theatrical. So, by the end of 1981, you had Wetton, Downes, Howe and Palmer in the same room, with a mission to take music that was smart, tight and commercially viable. No 15-minute solos, no concept albums about alien civilizations, just sharp songwriting and serious chops. They called it Asia. That came from John Wetton. He wanted something short, powerful, and easy to remember. Something that sounded big and international. According to Wetton, the band needed a name that felt like a clean break from the complicated, often abstract titles common in prog rock. No dragons, no planets, just a word that felt modern and had weight.
It was something that our manager mentioned, Brian Lane, when we had a band meeting, and we had hundreds of names written down and suggestions, and he said, "Oh, nobody's used Asia," and it completely slipped past everyone. And then when I got home, I thought, whoa, actually, that's not bad. 4 letters for people, you know, begins and ends with A, so it's kind of geometric. Roger Dean could have a field day with the logo. And I called him up the next day and I said, you know, when you said Asia, I actually thought about it, and I think it's pretty good. I think we should launch that one again.
Asia was designed to bridge Prog and mainstream. Wetton even called it King Crimson meets Foreigner.
You're as cold as ice.
If you've seen the serpent or dragon on Asia's album covers and thought, hey, is that an Ouroboros? Or maybe a nod to a Chinese zodiac? You're not alone. Even the band's own website seems a little tangled up on that one, because 1982 wasn't the year of the dragon or the snake, but Roger Dean, who also created iconic covers for Yes and Uriah Heep, wasn't painting calendars, he was channeling Prog mythos. So yeah, serpent, dragon, cosmic heel, wherever it is, it looks awesome.
Fantastic artist, and he's recreated the original dragon from the first album in 1982. It's a different colour, and he has a slightly different attitude this time. I'm talking about the dragon, not Roger. Roger always had attitude.
In 1982, they dropped their debut album. Produced by Mike Stone, who'd worked with Journey and Queen, this album blended chops with hooks. The first single, Hit of the Moment, hit number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, was written in one afternoon. Asia had to leave the UK temporarily to avoid massive tax bills. That's what you call a chart-topping problem. So much success. It literally drove them out of the country. Only time will tell, Soul Survivor, Time Again. These weren't just songs, they were statement pieces. Tight enough for a fan, but layered enough to keep the prog heads interested. For a time, Asia was the biggest band in America. Their debut was the best-selling album in 1982, more than Michael Jackson's Thriller. At least for a few weeks before the King of Pop took over. But you know how it goes. Big success brings big expectations, and even bigger egos. Their second album, Alpha, came out in 1983. Critics called it Asia Light. It had hits, Don't Cry did well, but it felt slicker, more polished and less daring. Behind the scenes, the band was unraveling. Wetton and Howe were both giants, but their writing chemistry just wasn't there. They respected each other, but creatively they were on different pages, and that started to show after the first album. The tension boiled over, and Wetton was suddenly out.
A real fan of Asia would know this, but at one point Greg Lake replaced you in Asia. Why was that? And
because I was drunk.
One of Asia's wildest moments came in 1983, when they became the first band ever to broadcast a live concert from Asia to an international MTV audience. The show was called Asia in Asia, and it took place in Budokan Hall in Tokyo. John Wetton had just left the band.
And we were getting closer and closer. John got a little bit panicky. John had a problem with alcohol, and he was a chronic alcoholic for many, many years. And he'd managed to contain it to a certain extent, but this just seemed to be topping him off and making it really, really difficult for him.
So it's quite an undertaking.
So Greg Lake, yes, that Greg Lake, stepped in last minute on vocals and bass. The crowd at Budokan was huge and excited.
John Wetton actually replaced Greg in King Crimson. So that was the connection. And John Wetton was a huge Emerson, Lake and Palmer fan and came to many, many concerts. That's how our friendship started to develop. And of course, it was quite ironic that Greg Lake was the one that replaced John Wetton in Asia.
And the band later said it was intense but unforgettable. A true what could go wrong moment in rock history. The chemistry didn't click. Wetton returned, but only if Howe was out. You see where this is going? Howe left. The original lineup was broken. Any Anyway, Howe didn't feel at ease in the group. He later said he missed the musical freedom of Yes and felt Asia was too commercially driven. Asia had become a carousel, the music still interesting, but the unity gone. With Steve Howe out, guitarist Mandy Mayer stepped in for Asia's third album, Astra, released in 1985. It featured a heavier sound, but commercial momentum had faded. Go was a modest hit, but the band soon went on hiatus. They leaned more into album-oriented rock and less into their prog roots. By the early 90s, it was mostly Wetton and Downes carrying the flag under the Asia name. They kept putting out music, Aqua in 92, Area in 94 and Arena in 96. They introduced new members, most notably John Payne, who became lead vocalist and bassist for over a decade. Still, they had a cult following. Fans in Western Europe and US kept the flame alive. Oddly enough, Asia didn't have that many fans in Asia. From the late 90s to 2006, Asia was living a double life. John Payne led one version of the band, touring, recording, giving thanks AOR. Meanwhile, Wetton and Downes stayed in touch behind the scenes, quietly laying the groundwork for a classic lineup reunion. Two paths, one name, until they finally converged in 2006. Out of nowhere, the classic lineup reunited.
Many days I traveled, but I know not where I'm going to. I'm lost.
Wetton, Howe, Downes and Palmer back together for the first time in 25 years.
Anyway, yes, after that, Steve Howe, when I came back into the band after their little Japanese tour, one of my stipulations was that Steve Howe would leave it. That sort of antagonism lasted for quite a while, but it was not there. I have to reiterate, I have to stress this, that it was not there when we reunited in 2006. There was no animosity between myself and Steve Howe. That hatchet had been buried a long, long time ago. In fact, when we reformed the band in 2006 with all four original members, we had a band meeting with management and everything at a neutral hotel in London. And as fate would have it, Steve Howe and I bumped into each other in the lobby. So the scene was all set for a gunfight at the OK Corral in room 417. And the sting has already been removed from this entire situation by Steve Howe and I bumping into each other in the lobby. And just with an enormous hug, we went up to the room practically sort of hand in hand. It was amazing.
The band was hitting its 25th anniversary. Nostalgia was in the air, and Wetton, having just recovered from serious heart surgery, was ready to reconnect with his roots and make peace with the past, musically and personally.
And the first one is the John. John, how do you feel health-wise? Because you had a heart surgery.
Yeah.
So
Never felt better. So yeah, I'm very grateful to be alive. It was a close thing, It was. I was maybe a few days away from a heart attack, but yeah, I'm okay. I'm really good, and I feel very grateful, happy to be alive, and raring to go.
They toured, they recorded, they released Phoenix and followed it with Omega and XXX. The music had matured, more introspective but still majestic. These weren't guys chasing their youth, they were owning their legacy. And the fans? We welcomed them back like old friends.
I couldn't stand to stay without you.
In 2013, the original lineup was broken once again, when Howe retired from the band and was replaced by guitarist Sam Coulson, a young British guitarist known for his YouTube shredding. He brought fresh energy to the band's later tours.
the English guy really was, he was very young. He's the guy we've got now, which is Sam Coulson. Very young, blank page, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, clean living guy, great vibrato, very bluesy, and not very, very eager, very willing to do it. So we chose Sam, and within 2 days we could make the announcement that A, we had a new guitar player.
Asia's classic era effectively came to a close in 2017, when John Wetton died from cancer at age 67.
John had an exceptional sense of humour. In the early days, John was actually the first member of the band that I met back in 2012. I remember going to the studio and being pretty nervous to sit down with John with the possibility of the Asia gig coming up. And, you know, John made me feel very at home very quickly, you know, shook my hand, and we sat down and chatted for a while, and it didn't feel awkward ever, you know. I remember when I joined the group, often I would travel with John to the gigs. Like the first gig we played was in Milton Keynes, not far away from where we used to rehearse and record. And, you know, John would give me a ride in his Porsche to save me being in my Honda Civic. Yeah, John was great, and you know, on those car journeys, and there were many of them,
he had been the band's frontman, bassist, and a key songwriter from the beginning, his role central to both the sound and identity of the group. By that point, the original lineup had already slowed down. Steve Howe had stepped back to focus on Yes, but Geoff Downes kept things going, bringing in Billy Sherwood, another Yes alum. To handle vocals and bass. In 2019, they joined the Royal Affair tour with Yes and Carl Palmer's ELP Legacy.
We have got the Royal Affair. This is kind of special, this tour. We've got Yes, topping the bill as always, Asia. You remember Asia?
Despite that success, Asia has not been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, either as a band or individually for their Asia work. Later came Ron Bumblefoot, who handled guitar and vocals. By 2022, Mark Bonilla briefly joined, but didn't record or tour. In 2024, Downes announced a new lineup for touring: Virgil Donati on drums, John Mitchell on guitar and vocals, and Harry Whitley on bass and lead vocals. Asia wasn't the most groundbreaking band in progressive rock, and they weren't trying to be. But what they did was take a different path, one that combined prog experience with mainstream appeal. Like in Crimson, Yes, and other progressive rock bands, Asia was an experiment, one that began in 1981 and in many ways ended with John Wetton's passing. What happens when you take the top players from the genre's biggest names and aim directly at the mainstream? A moment when some of genre's key players took a different direction and reached a different kind of audience. And sometimes that's enough. Don't unplug just yet. Asia's not done. They've got a fresh lineup and a 2026 tour on the map. So, if you've never heard Hit of the Moment live, with a crowd screaming every word, now's your chance to fix that. And while you're waiting, our next video's already cooking. We're diving into another prog rock beast, maybe Genesis, maybe ELP, maybe some band that only recorded one album in a barn in '74. Hit subscribe and stay tuned.
God bless you.